Hello and welcome to the Gonzales Mitchell Show. I'm Clay Mitchell, and today we have Avon Strategies principal Len Foxwell, who's a great polemic, knows politics cold, and I have him here to talk about what the heck happened to the Democratic Party and what they could do going forward. Now, Len, last I saw, the electoral vote count was, I believe, 312 to 226. Trump has won the popular vote by about 5 million votes. And on CNN the other night, I think it was election night, they showed a map of all the counties in the country. There's over 3,000 counties of where Kamala Harris outperformed Joe Biden in 2020. And I was shocked. It was totally blank.
Yeah.
What the heck happened?
Well, Clay, thanks for having me on. I appreciate
Sure,
it. So we could probably spend 2 days and not just the next 25 minutes talking about this, but
sure.
I want to go back to Kamala's announcement because there's this mythology within the Kamala Harris campaign in Democratic circles that the days and weeks in the immediate aftermath of Joe Biden's withdrawal from the presidential race and Kamala Harris's emergence as the Democratic nominee, that was kind of the high water mark in a campaign that quickly went south.
Right.
And what I would like to suggest is that we lost that race in that 6-week window, that the presumptive high water mark of the Harris campaign was actually where the seeds of destruction were sown. So let's go through it. Biden withdraws, and that in and of itself was one of the clumsiest, cringe-inducing chapters in American presidential history, and it had all the makings of a coup. The other side branded it a coup because, let's be honest, it was a coup. And the manner in which Biden was subbed out, having won all 50 state primaries in favor of someone who did not go before the Democratic primary electorate as a presidential candidate in her own right, it deprived her of the one thing that is absolutely essential for any political leader in a democracy, and that is legitimacy.
And I want to point out that in 2020, when she ran, she dropped out for Iowa,
Correct.
and even at that time received no votes. But go ahead.
You're exactly right, and I think that's germane to the point. And the manner in which we chose our nominee this year, it fundamentally undercut, I would say irrevocably undercut, our argument that democracy is on the ballot. Because whatever you want to say about Donald Trump, and I am no fan of Donald Trump's, as you know, he went through the process and she didn't. She literally had a nomination handed to her by a handful of party leaders who we never elected to a damn thing. Okay, so she's the nominee, Biden's out. She has at this point about 100 days to introduce herself to the American electorate, who really doesn't know who she is or what she
Mhm.
stands for as an independent political entity. She had the opportunity there to, in those early days, to define herself as a serious and thoughtful person of ideas, putting policies on the table, addressing the issues of the day, economics, global unrest, uh, healthcare, the whole panoply of things that voters actually care about. What did she do? We went on brat summer. We
I,
it,
I
it,
never I never understood that.
it was the single most unadult campaign strategy that I've seen, and I'm 54 years old, and I've
Yeah.
never seen anything quite like it. The campaign became about vibes and TikTok videos and something called Brat and Instagram shorts, as if she was running for the president of a collegiate sorority. That's no knock on collegiate sororities. They do
Right,
good
right.
work, but it was not a tone that was befitting someone who was seeking the highest office in the land in a time of economic uncertainty and global unrest. And it was really tone deaf because she knew we were eventually going to have to make the argument that democracy is on the ballot, a woman's right to choose is on the ballot, and that Donald Trump has, these authoritarian tendencies. So how do you wage a serious campaign when your introduction to the American people are dance fads and TikTok videos? It was very,
Right.
it made the inevitable shift from the summer to the fall campaign very abrupt, and I would suggest inauthentic. Uh, and throughout that summer, she assiduously avoided giving interviews to serious
Yes.
media outlets.
Yes.
We didn't do the New York Times editorial board. We didn't go on serious news shows. It was it was blogs, podcasts. No disrespect against podcasts, and that is an element of a good media strategy, but it cannot be the exclusive basis of the strategy itself.
Right.
And it just all fed into this sense that she's not a serious person and that she's not ready for the office, not at this time. And I think the seeds were, like I said, I think the seeds were sown in those early days. Clay, you've been in my classes at Johns Hopkins many times, and we
Mm-hmm.
talk about the empty glass theory, right?
Right.
Where
Right.
every moment is embodied by an empty glass, and either you're going to fill that glass by defining yourself and the situation, or your opponent's going to do it for you. And by refusing to go in and talk about her plan for economic renewal, her plan to bring down costs of living, her plan for addressing satisfactorily the Gaza conflict, what she was going to do in the Ukrainian conflict. By being conspicuously silent, she allowed Donald Trump and the Republican Party to define her as a dangerous, out of touch liberal that has nothing in common with the middle class and working class America. And for the life of me, I'll never understand how they let it happen.
Now, you know me. I'm a center right Republican, a moderate Republican. I voted for Democrats. I voted for Republicans. And honest to goodness, I thought during the summer Trump had some momentum after the assassination attempt, the first assassination attempt. And I get the strategy that she had about staying back and letting that sort of unfold and sort of go away. Uh, and the Democratic convention, I thought, was very well put together.
I
It was a
agree.
very well produced show, to the point where I thought it upstaged the Republican convention, which I also thought was very well produced. But after that point, she had a high, she had a boost in the polls. It looks like she was 3, 4, 5 points ahead in the popular vote, the national vote. And after that, Len, I agree with you. I have no idea. I still don't know what an opportunity economy is or means. And that was never to me, as someone in the middle, who I don't know what I'm voting for. I got to know what I'm voting for.
Clay, a smart politician years ago, and I can't remember who it is. That's what happens when you get middle age, become middle age. You start to lose a little bit off the memory. But a person very long ago told me that when the voters are trying to tell you something, it's usually good to be quiet and listen. And the voters were telling us as loudly and as clearly as they could. They wanted to talk about the cost of living, not macroeconomics. They don't care what the manufacturing index might suggest. They don't care about the fluctuations in the gross domestic product. And to be honest, they don't even care about what's happening with the stock market, which was on a tear, as you know. It's possible for an economy to be trending in the right direction, and at the same time, the cost of milk, bread, eggs, gasoline, and toilet paper to be going up as well. In fact, there's sometimes a causal effect. And we refused to talk about those issues. And when we did, it was almost in a way of lecturing and in a pedantic way, trying to convince the people that what they were seeing with their own eyes and what they were seeing in the grocery store checkout line isn't real. listen to us. Don't believe what you're seeing with your own eyes. And that's never going to work for obvious reasons. So we conspicuously took ourselves out of the economic lane, and when we finally did get around eventually to talking about issues, we seemed to run a single track campaign around abortion. And there's obviously, I am a strong supporter in reproductive freedoms. Obviously, our party is as well. And I see all sorts of problems with the Dobbs decision. But it is a part of an overall well-rounded message frame. It cannot be the hub, or it cannot be the exclusive message frame, because invariably you're going to lose men, you're going to lose black voters, you're going to lose Latino voters who are with the Democratic Party on economic issues and on a broad range of other social issues. But these are also faith-based traditional communities, and there is a sense of, still sense of unease within these communities when you talk about that issue ad nauseum. So there has to be leavened with other considerations and concerns. Like I said, the economy, education, maybe, environmental justice. There are some other issues that we never even touched upon over the course of this campaign.
I thought that the reproductive rights / abortion issue was a winner for the Democrats. Every poll I've seen is over 70% of
Correct.
Americans, regardless of party, support it. In Maryland, we had the reproductive rights amendment on the ballot that overwhelmingly passed, and I thought that was fertile ground for her. But you don't say when you're on the campaign trail that you're losing quote unquote uneducated women outside of the urban areas. That was wrong, my friend, for her to say, and her surrogates to say. Uneducated women, uneducated this. They're not uneducated, they just don't have a college degree, which most Americans don't. And that came across as a cut and a put down. Same way I saw former President Obama talking to uh, uh, black men, black male voters, when he was saying, I think, and he used the word brothers, I think the brothers have a problem with electing a woman as president. I thought, wow, really? That 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 was a terrible visual and audio image.
Clay, I can't think of anybody who came out of this election with their brand more tarnished than Barack Obama. And I'm a huge Obama fan. I mean, I
Yeah.
think he's one of the best presidents of the past 50 years. And he is obviously a historical figure in our nation and around the world. But he came across in this election as condescending, pedantic, and frankly out of touch. As if he and Michelle would emerge from their mansion just long enough to, set the proletariat straight, give us their marching orders, and then retreat, as F. Scott Fitzgerald might suggest, retreat behind their vast wealth. And I think it was not particularly well taken. It was not in sync with the moment. And I want to go back to something else we were talking about,
Mhm.
um, with talking about the economic element of this election and our outreach to Black and Latino voters. When we tried eventually to talk about jobs, wealth creation, community reinvestment, those issues, it came across as an exercise in micro-targeted identity politics. She didn't have a plan for American economic renewal. She didn't have a plan to reduce the cost of daily living other than price controls, which is one of the most inane economic theories ever known to man. She would put out a economic plan for Black men, an economic plan for Latino and Hispanic communities, as if their concerns were somehow different and separate from those of everyday Americans. And I think that, and I think I understand what she was trying to do, but it
Mhm.
came across as condescending, and it didn't come across as authentic because the plans she would present invariably were reduced to just giveaways to targeted populations. What's that old saying? The difference between giving someone a fish and teaching someone to fish. It came
Right.
across as just another giveaway to a politically vital interest group, and not something that represented anything rooted in serious thought. Nothing that had been really vetted for credibility and viability, and it just reinforced this was not a serious, thoughtful exercise in presidential politics.
Do you think the tides have shifted in a way so that and legitimately it used to be, uh, quote unquote, the black vote voted in a monolith, Hispanic votes voted in a monolith, and et cetera, et cetera. This time it looks like the Republican message had gains all across the board to the point where it's not quite there, but uh, I mean, they were getting 45% of the Hispanic vote, I think 55% among men. There's this huge shift going on where I agree with you that I think everybody has to buy eggs, everybody buys bread, everybody buys gasoline, and those are the commonalities between all the groups. And that's the way the approach should be. I don't think that the Democratic Party can count on automatic votes from any group anymore, and they have to address the whole. And when you were saying she had targeted plans for different groups of people, I don't know if that works anymore.
I don't think it does. And as time goes on and generations pass, we become further and further removed from the seminal days of the civil rights movement and the days of Kennedy and Johnson and iconic Democratic leaders who laid the groundwork for opportunity for all Americans. We live in a society of immediate returns on investment. What have you done for me lately?
Right.
And quite honestly, the answer has been not much.
Yep.
And when you couple that with a message that seems disproportionately geared to the affluent upper middle class, and when your most prominent surrogates are affluent upper middle class Americans, and obviously some of the most wealthy Americans, celebrities. I
Mhm.
mean, you know, say what you. I mean, we all love Taylor Swift. We all love Beyonce. We all love. I'm not sure we all love
Springsteen.
Mark Cuban, but these people like them for entertainment value or for whatever. We don't look to them for political guidance because their daily lives are lived in a different space of reality than the rest of us. Okay, they are not relatable. And when we use people like that as surrogates, articulating a message such as democracy and relitigating the events of January 6th, there's not much in that message for working class Americans and middle class Americans who are struggling to make ends meet, put food on the table while setting money aside for retirement and their kids' college education. And so I agree with you. I think that 2016 may have been a fluke. The kind of a paella of working class rage and a flawed Democratic nominee, and maybe some things like James Comey. But this year was more structural in nature. I think what we're seeing here are the early strains of a political realignment and a dismantling of a Democratic coalition, more along the lines of what we saw beginning in 1968 and that culminated in 1980 with the election of Reagan. So the question is, now that we've identified the problem, what is the solution? And that's what we got to figure out. What we do know for a fact is that performative anger, performative grief, performative progressivism is not going to work. That is a repellent to middle America and to the voters that we need to bring back into the Democratic coalition.
It's a good segue into the topic I wanted to talk about, spent some time on here last, was as the consultant of Trade Avon Strategies, and they should have hired you, my friend. What does the Democratic Party need to do after licking its wounds, after getting over this horrendous loss? What does the party, the National Party especially, need to do from here on out looking towards the next election?
Well, first, we need to recognize that the economy is always going to trump any other issue on the board. I don't care what the pollsters say. I saw polling coming out of Pennsylvania, for instance, that said more voters are concerned with democracy than economics. That's nonsense. And that pollster should be fired or should be taken off the speed dial list. The economy is always going to be first and foremost. Okay, and voters are more intelligent than we give them credit for sometimes in the political class. They know when they're being talked down to. They know when we're trying to buy them. And when we talk about economics, when we talk about fiscal realities facing American households, it can't just be about giving you X amount of dollars for X purpose. Okay, we've tried that. Joe Biden shoveled money. He basically turned the mint upside down, giving money out to American consumers. It didn't work. It just created an inflationary mess that the Fed had to come in and try to correct through interest rates, and it led to an unpopular one-term presidency. So we actually have to think seriously about this. And to those folks who say, well, people don't pay attention to policy. People don't pay attention to the details. I will just remind those individuals that the last two successful Democratic presidencies we had, the Clinton presidency and the Obama presidency, those two were also often derided as policy wonks who sometimes could speak above the heads of the American people. But the people listened, and even if they didn't necessarily know the ins and outs of strategic investments and tax credits and monetary policy reforms, they understood that they can tell when someone has given serious thought to the issue and has a genuine plan, as opposed to a political impulse to throw money at people. So number one, we need to get back into the economic lane, and it needs to be in a serious and substantive manner. We also need to, and I think David Axelrod said this as well as anybody, we need to go back and have a legitimate conversation with the members of the Democratic coalition who are beginning to drift. Black voters, Latino and Hispanic voters, Jewish voters, but we can't do it as sociologists and missionaries who are going out to the hinterlands from our affluent inner suburban communities where we feel comfortable. We have to actually go with the desire and in the spirit of having an honest conversation of what went wrong. I saw several instances in which folks were on the street trying to tell us that they didn't like that Donald Trump is better for their pocketbook than we are. That Donald Trump is better for their financial futures. Donald Trump is better for their college accounts, for their retirement accounts than we are. And we would literally look into a screen and say, they're wrong. And we have to recognize that no one demographic, no one part of the state, and frankly, no party has a monopoly on good ideas. And that's where we are, unfortunately, now as a party. The prevalent attitude within the inner sanctums of the Democratic Party is one of smugness. That we're just a little smarter than everybody else because we're a little wealthier and we're a little better educated than everybody else.
I think I said the other day to Patrick Gonzales, this was a shellacking, there's no doubt. But I don't discount the Democratic Party reorganizing itself, learning a lesson, and come midterms, President Trump may see some losses, especially in House. It looks like the Republicans are going to take the House, but very thin margin. And they have to work on getting quality candidates out there in these close race districts. And I think if they change their message, they learn from this, and they come across with authenticity, the party can be back again. But they have to get rid of, like you said, that elitism that comes across. I think that's a formula for success later on. Uh, but they
So I
need to
agree
hire
with
you. They need to hire you, my friend.
yeah, they won't listen to me because I'm not a kid who has, four phones going on, looking at five different social media devices at the same time. I We are now the party of wealthy inner suburban book clubs. That's what we
Yeah.
are. And we are now clearly a wine track party, and that is a component of the Democratic coalition. It cannot be the component of the Democratic coalition, or we will be consigned to minority status for a very long time. I agree with you. There's the best thing to happen to the Democratic Party is that the Republicans will control all 3 points of power, the presidency, the Senate, and the House, because history has shown that when one party controls all three levers of American government, they invariably overreach. They go too far. They give in to their worst and most extreme impulses, and it provides a scene for the other party to make a comeback. So we will have the opportunity. The question is, how do we choose to respond? And to what extent did we learn from this experience?
Well, I want to have you back on again before Inauguration Day. Uh, maybe on two more times. One to talk about the Hop Start program at Johns Hopkins, and the other one is as the administration takes shape to get your views on how that's turning out.
I certainly
So
will. By the way, I love what Marco Rubio said yesterday about Israel and Hamas. We
yeah,
have to recognize when good ideas come from the other side of the aisle. And he said the right thing, and he said it the right way. Good for him.
excellent. Well, I look at the little clock on the wall, Len, and we've reached the point in time where it's time to say goodbye, Patrick.
Goodbye, Patrick.
Goodbye, Patrick, wherever you are.